Hey everyone, welcome to one of my favorite kinds of videos to make when a new Pokemon game comes out. The top 10 best Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. These are the 10 Pokemon I feel are the best to use in a playthrough. Though in my opinion, they're all very good. And I'll explain why of course. But they also kind of spoke to me as good Pokemon for a playthrough. I know that I just put up the you should use video, and you'll see a few Pokemon return from that list too. But today, expect more of my raw opinion, as opposed to just facts about how good these monsters are. Oh, and also, I'm not going to just limit myself to only new Pokemon, so that's a pretty big change too. If you guys understand, then I won't waste any more time. Let's get into it. Before we start though, you guys should head over to Mystic Umbreon's Shorts, where we'll be having daily Scarlet and Violet content coming out, as well as daily Pokemon facts. After the best team goes up, I will actually be starting a brand new Scarlet and Violet series exclusively over there on Mystic Umbreon's Shorts that I think the majority of you guys will like. Also, if you like anime and fanfics, head over to Mystic Reads, where I'm currently reading Road to be a Pokemon Master Kanto Edition, an adventure with Ash and Serena going through Kanto together. If you like anime, I'm reading through the Yaju Sanin, a Naruto fanfic. I will leave the links for both these channels in the description below and the iCard above. Here we go. We're gonna start the video with an interesting Pokemon that is worth using for its amazing special attack, Glimmora. It's definitely an odd looking Pokemon, there's no doubt, whether you're looking at it opened or closed. And naturally, it's got a very small and weird pre-evolution. However, think about it like this. Base 130 attack, decent enough bulk, and a speed stat that, while not amazing, is way better than you'd ever think it would be looking at this thing. Its ability, Toxic Debris, is actually a very interesting one. See, if you're hit with the physical move, then toxic spikes come out and scatter around the opponent, which can help you cripple a team big time. It'll make running Venoshock on this thing really worthwhile too, making it easy to just get massive damage in an attempt to sweep an opponent. There's a reason why you see Glimmora in such important spots throughout the region, and I definitely am a believer in it being a pretty good Pokemon regardless of how you feel about how it looks. Now, the next Pokemon we're going to talk about is Barraskewda, which I was a big fan of using in Sword and Shield, and once again think is worth throwing on a team in these new games. See, Barraskewda is still a super fast and powerful water type, but what really sets it aside from its contemporaries is of course that move pool. You can get one early enough in the games to have it for a long while too, as basically you can find it in any one large body of water. It'll evolve into Barraskewda at level 26, and just sort of vibe with your whole team, making it a great offensive Pokemon to include. Its access to Liquidation, Crunch, Close Combat, and other moves make it just such a coverage machine. I would say, unless you're in a playthrough where you only want to use 9th gen Pokemon, you can't get much better with water types than using Barraskewda. I'm a big supporter, and I'm pretty glad to be talking about it again in this video. The next entry on the list is another top Sword and Shield Pokemon that is still super good today. Corviknight is one of the many flying type Pokemon you can get your hands on early on in Paldea, and it's probably the best once again at present. Though of course Staraptor will always have something to say about that, as it normally would hold that position. But I think with the 9th generation, we've seen a small changing of the guard with that. That power, defense, and moves that Corviknight has at its disposal really pushes it in a region where you need to worry about massive battles with every single available typing. And Staraptor's normal type moves don't really track as well. You'll basically get a ton out of having Corviknight run Body Press, Iron Head, and Brave Bird, as those 3 moves can cover about half of all typings. So any 4th move you add will just be icing on the cake. Also, that Steel flying typing? Come on folks, that's just phenomenal from a defensive standpoint with so many resistances and so few weaknesses. Alrighty, I talked about Clodsire a bit in my top 10 Pokemon you should use video. And honestly, I felt so passionate about it that I felt it was more than deserving of being called one of the best Pokemon in the new games. It's so bulky, has great typings, and damn, just look at this thing. I love its design so much, like, it's so silly looking and seems like it'd be a pretty hilarious Pokemon to see flopping around in real life. It can't be understated how nice of a wall Clodsire is, with its typing and defenses. Its special defense at base 100 is fantastic, and with many of its weaknesses being more so from special typings, it makes that all the more important. It also offers a lot of passive moves like Toxic Spikes and Yawn, which will indeed work with the bulk to allow you to either put everyone to sleep or leave everybody with a big gaping toxic wound on themselves. There's of course nice offensive moves too, so you're not just playing passively, using moves like Earthquake and Poison Jab. Do I need to even bring up the water absorbability on this spiny fish? It completely eliminates water type Pokemon's stabs and can make it very easy to heal up Clodsire. So in conclusion, yeah, you should definitely use Clodsire in a playthrough, and it's one of the best Pokemon you can use. So it's time for the final Pokemon of the first half of the list, and it's gonna be the very good, very dead boy, Houndstone. Greavard's evolution is definitely one that's gonna be loved for how it looks, but maybe not for how great it is. And it actually is pretty great. It's a fantastic coverage machine, getting access to all 3 of the elemental fangs, and a very nice Phantom Force for stab. Its stats are very solid defensively, and it's a nice physical attacker, just not as fast as you would hope it would be. But all in all, pretty decent for a ghost dog. Its abilities being Sand Rush and Fluffy leave a little bit to be desired, but if you're running a team that features Sandstorm during your playthrough, Houndstone is perfect for it, as suddenly it has no speed issues and can get the best of everything it has to offer. Plus, man, it's just a funny looking Pokemon. I love its big jaw. Speaking of, why didn't they just give this thing Strong Jaw? That would have been perfect, especially with the move pool it has. That notwithstanding, Houndstone is a fantastic addition to any team with the ghost typing and a large variety of moves to choose from. I definitely didn't want to use Greavard at first in Scarlet and Violet, but Houndstone makes that a hard decision to make. I'm gonna lead off this top 5 by saying, I can't believe they put Minecraft in Pokemon this time. Garganacl is basically like some sort of golem beacon thing made of salt that honestly has a pretty cool pyramid-esque design. I like it, and in battle it's actually very good. It's cool that you can get Nacui so early on, so that you can make the most out of what might be the best new rock-type Pokemon they introduced that you can reasonably use in a playthrough. Its stats are almost exactly what you'd expect. Massive bulk, and a tremendous attack stat with bad speed. I was actually surprised to see just how good its special defense was, and considering its signature move, that's pretty great. We were introduced to the move Salt Cure, which will do some chip damage of 1/8 of a Pokemon's HP each turn. But with water and steel types, you'll get to do a full quarter of damage, as it's doubled for those two. Since most water types tend to be special attackers, it means that being able to tank a super effective hit or two is pretty important, and Garganacl can do that. It also introduced one of the most dominant new abilities we've had in a long while, with Purifying Salt. That halves damage from ghost-type attacks, and protects Garganacl from moves that cause status conditions. So you pretty much don't have to worry about being burned or poisoned at all. Naturally, we're only talking about things from an in-game perspective here, but I can't help but think with a curse set, this thing is gonna be something you may see gaining traction in competitive aspects. Garganacl is one of the best new Pokemon introduced, and it's pretty awesome to use. So this next spot is going to be taken by Annihilape. And like I mentioned in my video about the Pokemon you should use, it's very good. Like, it's scary good. And I'm not just saying that because it's a ghost type. This thing has one of the best offensive type combos you could ever ask for, and its stats are prime. It rocks out with 115 attack, 90 speed, and then actual defenses at 80 physical and 90 special, alongside 110 base HP. That means we have a speedy, strong attacker with actual bulk just sitting here with an amazing typing. Rage Fist is a crazy new signature move that powers up by 50 every time Annihilape is hit, and it doesn't even reset if it gets knocked out or sent back to your party. So you could reasonably just allow your Annihilape to get taken out in battle, revive it, and then come out and just Rage Fist over and over again for massive damage and sweep mostly any opponent. There's just so little that Annihilape does wrong. And considering how early it could be obtained and how much it can actually take on most of the necessary battles in Paldea, it probably should have been in the number 1 spot. But there are a few Pokemon I think you can get just a bit more out of. Let's take a look at the next one. Garchomp starts off our top 3. And that shouldn't be a huge surprise, right? Garchomp is always a worthwhile Pokemon to use in any game it's available in, including this one. You can get Gible so early on, and with the way the games can unfurl, it's not exactly difficult to get to the point of evolving in the Garchomp, and you can still have plenty to do in your journey. It's got some bulk, an extremely high 130 base attack, and speed over 100. That sort of is insane for a Pokemon you could start working on very early without needing to climb anywhere or do any weird questline for. The access to Earthquake, Crunch, Dragon Claw, and other nice unexpected coverage moves make it super easy to just plug Garchomp onto any team anybody uses. I understand that Garchomp is a very boring Pokemon to go and use, but this is probably the earliest it's ever been available in a game that made it viable to just start using. I probably still wouldn't use it, but I will not allow that feeling to prevent me from acknowledging just how great it is and how cool it is to have access to it out of the gate. So the penultimate spot of the list is taken up by a Pokemon that I actually really liked, but it had some drawbacks that kept me from putting it at number 1. Palafin is arguably one of the most interesting Pokemon they've ever introduced into the franchise, but I want to focus on the drawbacks real quick. For one, it's so incredibly disappointing that it looks virtually no different from Finnison aside from a heart on its chest. This generation has a ton of great new Pokemon, but it definitely had a problem with certain lines, and evolution's just looking the same. Also, beyond physical features, like, why do we have to be in a union circle to get Finnison to evolve into Palafin? There are plenty of people who don't have access to online features with their Switch due to the paywall. And while we can all say that it's inexpensive and nobody should be worried about it, well, that's true, but it still isn't exactly ideal. The final drawback I guess one could see is that what makes Palafin amazing is its ability 0 to hero, and the only way it can activate it is if you switch it out of battle. The best way to do that, of course, is to run it as your lead in every battle and just flip turn out if you can, because when you do, its hero form will come out and it's no pushover. We're talking solid defenses alongside 100 speed and a massive, scary, big-time 160 attack stat. That's one of the highest attack stats ever. And the fact that it's just on this basic Pokemon that only requires switching out of battle and back in to activate is a small price to pay, albeit a little annoying. It has a great move pool with its water type stab, and then acrobatics and close combat, which you know are all fantastic moves on something with such incredibly high speed and attack. I could wax poetic about Palafin for a bit longer, but I'll cut this entry here, as I'm not even sure the number 1 spot has this much to talk about. Shout out to this hero. It's a Pokemon that you definitely should use if your mind is on using the best of the best. Alright, so the number 1 spot today is taken by Old Reliable, Gardevoir. It faced stiff competition for this number 1 spot, but I do think it's probably the best Pokemon in the game in my humble opinion. Honestly, I could have slapped any of these last few Pokemon in the number 1 spot, but Gardy honestly spoke to me here. We can't deny the great psychic fairy typing it has, as well as the fantastic special stats. It's just a superbly useful Pokemon. Its access to Psychic and Moonblast afford the ability to stomp out almost any Pokemon, with the exception of Steel types. Also, probably most important to bring up, you only need to get to level 30 to evolve into Gardevoir, so you can probably just hammer out the Steel-type Titan earlier on, and then worry about nothing else with your Guardy for the rest of your challenge really. It can lead point on your team, protect itself with Aura Sphere, Thunderbolt, and Shadow Ball, and all in all, act as an amazing special attacker in a game where it's easy to be enchanted by physical mons. That's it though. I'm sure a lot of you might be groaning about Guardy taking the top spot on a list like this, but don't blame me. Blame Game Freak. They knew full well Gardevoir and Garchomp were really good. They didn't need to put them in the games. Oh, and by the way, a few weeks ago I said Gardevoir would eventually make its way onto a list or some kind of team. I told you so. Well, that's gonna do it for this video. In my opinion, these are the 10 best Pokemon in the games. Though of course, it's only one man's thoughts. I want to hear from you guys, what you think the best Pokemon are in these games, and just what Pokemon you feel did the best for your teams. Whether it was a starter, a personal favorite, even if you went and soloed the entire game with some Pokemon you traded in from another copy that was super strong, I'm interested in hearing. I've got tons of Scarlet and Violet teams, top 10s, and other content planned for the next few weeks. So keep an eye out, and I'll see you then. Thanks for watching the video and for coming through and enjoying Scarlet and Violet with me. We've got so much content coming surrounding Gen 9 through the end of the year and beyond, including the top 10 strongest Pokemon, the best team for the games, and much more. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. When we get to 5,000 subs on the channel, we're going to have a new series related to Scarlet and Violet that will be exclusive to there, so go subscribe. Also, if you're into fanfictions or Genshin Impact, check out Mystic Reads and Tebotchnary. I offer a ton of creative spoken word content over there, and I do a bunch of theories and lore videos surrounding Genshin Impact. So come join me over there at that floats your boat. That's all for now. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time for more Scarlet and Violet content.